Hi, this is Peggy from WAR. So today our guest is Connelly. So Anne is a faculty member at the Singularity University. She focuses on blockchain. And she's also the co-author of a graphic novel about blockchain that is called Trust. So that's very interesting. Thank you so much, Anne, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
No, that's great. So let's chat about the new normal in financial services. So first question, from your perspective, what would be some of the big impact, lasting impacts from COVID on the industry?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When you look at what's happening just in terms of national level spend and the amount of money that's being printed in, the United States and Canada to help cover that, I think we're going to be looking at long-term effects as a result of this. We're going to be paying through taxes and inflation for, the reparations of this for many, many years. And I think the younger generations are going to be looking for ways to avoid that. They're going to be turning to cryptocurrencies and other non-government monetary instruments where they can try to, have a better store of value than what they might have in, say, a traditional fiat currency. So I think we're going to see greater adoption of crypto, particularly Bitcoin, and have people looking into other options in the financial markets that they wouldn't have normally thought about.
Very interesting. So if we think about regulations, and so the regulations that will be coming for sure following the crisis, what do you see in terms of new regulations, and do you see some of these regulations align with what you just mentioned actually?
Yeah, I think governments are finally going to have to take a serious look at both the regulations that support and prevent some of these new models, particularly in the cryptocurrency space. There's a lot of activity that's happened historically, things like the New York State bit license that have prevented innovation in that space. And that's just not going to fly anymore. There's too many companies, enterprises, individuals that have gotten on board with blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies as a part of what they're doing to really have government clamping down. And the global nature of that whole subset of finance just makes it impossible really for regulators to clamp down in the same way as they could in other ways. And so I think it's really going to be looking not so much about how do we take today's system and apply it to this whole new financial world, but really how do we look at this world and the benefits that it brings and create specific regulation that will help protect citizens while also enabling that sector to grow.
Very interesting. And so you're talking about, the global world. Do you see, you mentioned the debt, obviously, in terms of global stability, financial stability, the order in the world, what's your perspective on that?
I think we're ready for a pretty big shakeup. When you look at just the political consequences of what are happening now between, some of the previous major players, you look at United States, China, Russia, how that's all playing out. I think a lot of the political consequences of some of what's happening there is going to hit the financial industry quite significantly. I think, again, people are going to start to lose trust in government currencies, which is something that we've seen in many other countries around the world. You can look at Argentina, South Africa, Venezuela, Zimbabwe. I think we're going to start to see some of that historical trust that's been such a foundational trust in the society that we built is going to start to erode. And people, again, are going to be looking at other locations to put their money to ensure that, they'll have enough to retire and enough to pass on to their children. So I think it's going to be really important to sort of stop looking at our own personal financial circumstances or our national ones just from that national level and really say, hey, we're part of a global world now. What does that mean in terms of what services are on offer and how the financial world is going to change moving forward?
Very cool. So if I bring that to the next point, which is competitive positioning and the crisis maybe accelerating some of this shift and resetting competitive positioning, what would you see?
Well, we've already seen in the United States that shortly after there was government support for individuals, and I think they gave out $1,200 checks or something, the volume of $1,200 deposits into Coinbase wallet, which is one of the most popular cryptocurrency wallets, just skyrocketed. So I think people are already finding other routes and other things, other places to put their money. So I think that's really, one of the biggest changes is just looking at how these younger generations see financial services, and it's not going to be the way that their parents did. And so what does that world look like moving forward? They're going to move away from branch-based banking, and find, services that suit their now 100% digital needs.
So where would you see the current incumbents then going in terms of transformation or maybe extinction, from where you sit?
Yeah, I think extinction is certainly on the table. It's definitely something that the incumbents are going to have to look out for. But I think more than anything, it's not so much about what they offer or what they don't offer. It's how agile are they in terms of being able to change their offering based on the customer needs. And as we've seen, historically, and then particularly in this now isolated time, I think the incumbents are just they're not meeting that agility. And so it's really less about function rather than culture, and looking at, will they be able to change and take the value that they do bring, which is a trusted brand and history and structure, and then add other elements to their offering that will enable them to move forward in a meaningful way. I could certainly see traditional banks getting into crypto custody, into crypto management. We're already seeing PayPal just the other day has gotten on board with doing onboarding for cryptocurrency, which is going to be a huge shift in that space and in terms of money movement globally. So it's really just a matter of these companies, can they actually identify what their added value is and then adapt to bring that to the new financial world.
Yes, that's a very good point, because this trust factor, leveraging that with crypto, what does it mean versus this innovation at the margin, always keeping the old business model and slowly crawling. So that's a great point. So talking about transformation, so I know it's been 3-4 months now that we're all in lockdown. So did you pick up new habits, hopefully great habits? Anything you want to share?
I spend more time than I'd like to admit baking bread these days.
Okay.
But I've been diving into actually some of the more interesting academic research around new models of society and new ways of doing things. So actually breaking down what we've built on, the financial and societal foundations to a much deeper level. So looking, one of the most interesting ones I found is in and around quadratic funding. And so this is a whole methodology of matching donations or matching financial support, perhaps through like a decentralized venture capital fund, where each person, each sort of dollar to dollar contribution, let's say, will get matched at a higher rate for lower amounts. So if you're giving $1, it will get, let's say, for example, a 10x match, where if you donate 100, it might only get, a 1.1 match. And the whole model around that is looking at, does your whole community support this initiative, whether or not they have the money to put behind it? Yeah. So there's some really new and amazing models that are happening. The quadratic funding is being tested right now through a crypto grants program called Gitcoin. So definitely recommend checking that out. So yeah, just diving into, if society really falls apart after all of this, how would we rebuild it using some of these new models?
That's super interesting. And the thing is, we're in developed countries. But you spent a lot of time working in developing countries. So that's probably shaping a lot of the way you think and your interests. And that's one of the things I believe we miss very often, is the fact that, that's a part of the world, but it's not the majority of the world. And what does it mean for some society that might have less structure to bring down, to be able to have societies that might be more fair, more sustainable, and better for the community as a whole? Well, thank you. I was absolutely not aware of that model, actually.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. There's some neat stuff that's happening in the world today, I think.
That's some good that's going to come from that crisis, I'm sure. Well, thank you so much, Anne, for coming and sharing your thoughts. That was great to hear your perspective coming from a different vantage point. Very enlightening and very thought-provoking. Thank you for taking the time.
No, thanks for having me. It was great.
Thank you. Bye-bye.